Good evening. Welcome to our daily news segment. Right now, we bring you the roundup of the latest developments in the world of cannabis, from the slowest revenue growth for the Illinois cannabis sales to executives from the Major Alcohol Association urging the industry to support the legalization of cannabis. We'll also cover a bill in Arkansas that could seal past convictions from possession of recreational cannabis, and a vote in Texas House that could allow medical cannabis as an alternative to opioids. Additionally, we'll look at the failed attempt to legalize recreational cannabis in Indiana and how Texans are contributing to the New Mexico legal cannabis sales. Lastly, we'll discuss the new Alabama laws aimed at banning the sale of Delta 8 products to minors. Stay tuned for all the details. Recreational cannabis sales in Illinois rose 3% year over year in March, the slowest revenue growth since legalization, as declining prices and fewer new stores openings impacted the market. The state's cannabis prices have not declined as steeply as elsewhere in the industry, and the unit sales continue to rise, a bit slower pace than the previous months. The number of new stores opened has lower than anticipated, with only a handful of the 192 stores licensed in 2020 actually opening. This may be due to various changes, including the falling stock price, rising interest rates, and economic uncertainty. Additionally, Illinois is now facing increased competition for Missouri, which legalized recreational cannabis in February 2022. Out-of-state sales fell 17% in March, contributing to an overall slowdown in growth. The Texas House of Representatives is set to vote next week on two separate bills to expand the state's medical cannabis program. One bill aims to replace the current THC cap with a reasonable limit, while the other would allow patients with chronic pain to access medical cannabis as an alternative to opioids. The THC cap has been a major point of contention as it limits the effectiveness of medical cannabis for many patients. The advocates argue that a reasonable limit should be set based off of scientific evidence. The chronic pain bill would also expand the list of qualifying conditions for medical cannabis, which currently includes only a few specific conditions. The bills have bipartisan support and are seen as positive steps towards improving the access to medical cannabis for Texans. Some advocates say that the bill still did not go far enough and are calling for further reforms, such as allowing smokable cannabis and home cultivation. A bill has been introduced in Arkansas's legislation that would legalize the possession of up to 4 ounces of cannabis and expunge minor cannabis-related convictions if the state legalizes recreational cannabis. The proposed legislation also includes provisions to allow for home cultivation up to 6 plants and the establishment of a regulated cannabis industry. Licenses issued for cultivators, processors, and retailers. The bill's sponsors argued that it's time for Arkansas to join other states in legalizing cannabis, and that it would generate significant tax revenue for the state. However, the bill is likely to face opposition for some of the conservative lawmakers and law enforcement groups who may argue that legalization would lead to an increased drug use and public safety concerns. A group of senior executives from a major alcohol industry associations in the U.S. have signed a letter urging their colleagues in the sector to support efforts to legalize and regulate cannabis at a federal level. The letter, addressed to the National Association of Beverage Importers, the Wine and Spirits Wholesalers of America, and Distilled Spirits Council, argues that cannabis legalization is inevitable and that it presents an opportunity for the alcohol industry to get ahead of the curve and potentially tap into new markets. The letter cites data showing that alcohol sales have been stagnant or declining in recent years. While cannabis sales have been growing, it argues that legalizing cannabis would create jobs and generate tax revenue. The executives also highlighted potential health benefits of cannabis, noting that it's safer than alcohol. The letter marks a notable shift in the stance for some of the alcohol industry, which has traditionally been opposed to cannabis legalization, and reflect a growing recognition of the potential benefits ending prohibition. A Democratic lawmaker in Indiana introduced a bill to legalize cannabis and called for a vote on the measure, but the Republican lawmakers rejected it. The bill would have legalized cannabis for adults 21 and older, allowing them to possess and use up to 2 ounces of cannabis and grow up to 6 plants. The measure also included provisions for expunging prior cannabis convictions and regulating legal cannabis industry in the state. However, the Republican-controlled House committee voted 8-4 against the bill, the lawmakers arguing that cannabis legalization would harm public health and safety. The decision highlights an ongoing partisan divide over cannabis policy, with many Republican lawmakers still opposed to legalization, despite growing public support for reform. According to the data released by the New Mexico state government, Texans accounted for a significant share of the state's $300 million in legal cannabis sales in the first year of legalization. Texas residents made up for about 20% of all recreational cannabis purchases in the state, despite the fact that cannabis remains illegal in Texas. The data revealed that out-of-state buyers overall accounted for about a third of all legal cannabis sales in New Mexico. The high number of Texan residents crossing the border to purchase legal cannabis highlights the demand for cannabis reform in Texas, where advocates are calling for the lawmakers to legalize the plant and establish a regulated industry in the state. Alabama Governor Kay Ivey signed a bill into law that aims to ban all sale of Delta-8 THC products to anyone under the age of 21. Delta-8 THC is a compound found in cannabis that can produce a psychoactive effect similar to Delta-9 THC, which is the main psychoactive ingredient component of cannabis. While Delta-8 THC is not specifically listed as a controlled substance under federal law, several states have enacted a law to regulate the sale and use. Under the new Alabama law, retailers who sell Delta-8 THC products to minors can face fines and other penalties. The law takes effect on October 1, 2023. And that wraps it up for today's Cannabis News Update. It's clear that the conversation around cannabis is rapidly evolving. We'll continue to keep you up to date on the latest developments in this ever-changing industry. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to like and subscribe. Alabama